Hello and welcome to Sonic Bytes, the freewheeling conversation and interview series for the eclectic music lover. This week we're extremely excited to welcome our second musical guest on the podcast, Phill Vidler.
Take me to the low. Take me to the low.
Phill is a singer, songwriter and multi-instrumentalist from Medway, currently living and performing in London and across the UK. Inspired by artists such as David Bowie, Bon Iver and bands such as Fleet Foxes, Phil's songs are emotional and raw with moving vocal performances, yet clever and evocative with thought-provoking lyrics and expansive and dynamic instrumentation. After writing his first song at 10 years old, Phill has self-released 3 studio albums: The World's Not Looking in 2013, The Benefits of Devolution in 2014, and Heliotropic with his band Phill Vidler and the Farseers in 2015. In this episode, we discuss his latest release, This Too Shall Pass, as well as Phil's writing and recording process, musical inspirations, life as an independent artist, and advice for younger artists starting out. If you're enjoying the podcast, follow us on Spotify, Apple or Stitcher, or subscribe to us on YouTube, as it really helps support the show and allows us to make even more freewheeling content. We hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, I have like the word amazing in here like so many times. Like amazing and really nice are like the two like things. Like, oh, really nice guitar, amazing strings, really nice vocal line, amazing production. It's just like in most of my notes.
Yeah,
That's a good.
Thanks,
that's
man.
a good sign.
Yeah, that is a good sign. It's a very good sign.
But no, it's an absolutely fantastic album, and I really love the kind of the fact that it's sort of consciously themed as well. That you have like an introductory, sort of piece. You have like a mid album like musical break as well, like a nice little interlude, which sort of carries it through really nicely. Is this the first sort of full conceptual album that you're going to release?
Conceptual in that it's about like one thing. Kind of no, because my album Heliotropic from 2015 had a similar sort of conceptual landscape where it's that charted the course of a day. So it starts off and it's like the sounds are kind of like bird song almost, but it's like chimey guitars and it's like sunrise, and then sunsets halfway through the album, and then the latter half of the album is nighttime. And the very last song is like Dusk Before the Dawn. So it's very like dark and like brooding, and there's some funky stuff going on here. And then the bonus track, as a little added bit of trivia, is like a dream sequence because it's all very echoey and like ethereal and floaty and stuff. So in short, no, this isn't the first concept album that I've written. Like literally all of my albums all of my releases really since 2014 have had like a very set beginning, middle, and end. Like I like the idea of an album being like a musical almost, where you've got your opening, setting the scene kind of thing, and then the middle song will be like an entr'acte for the second half. Where it like brings in themes, like especially on this album because there's piano, it's the piano instrumental, and it only has it's only got 2 melodies in it that you've heard yet on the album, and then there's another 2 melodies that come later on in the album, and it's supposed to be this sort of thing that you only realize when you've either if you're listening to it again, or there's this recognition when you hear the song later on. You're like, hang on, I know this bit. All right, where's this from? Oh, this is from that song. And that happens in musicals, like you've got like themes from
Reprises
yeah, exactly. Like West Side Story, for example, the entr'acte in that has got like every single song in the show, and Les Mis as well. Everything. Les Mis uses a lot of borrowed melodies from each song anyway, so the whole thing is like a meta reference to itself.
That's cool, man. Because when you listen to the aesthetic of the album, it doesn't really necessarily draw from musicals, like directly from the sound, the instrumentation. But if it's drawing from a concept from the musical and you're putting it into a new genre, then that's like super fresh. Did you consciously think about that, or?
Well, the first song that I wrote was the second to last one, which was Dust. And And that felt to me almost like, because in musicals, there's this thing called the I Want song. I don't know how much you guys know about like musicals and the structure of them or whatever. But in musicals, there's this thing called the I Want song, which is the protagonist's like a part of your world from Little Mermaid, or like Belle Reprieve from Beauty and the Beast, and I Just Can't Wait to Be King. All of these kinds of songs in Disney films that I grew up listening to, they are like I Want songs, and they give the protagonist like the motion towards things. Normally it comes earlier on in the show or the film, and that's why I thought, well, let's put the first song that I wrote at the second to last thing as like a flashback, because it's kind of more interesting to find out what I'm actually looking for when it's about to end, I feel. So, you know, I take a lot of pride in structuring the albums that I write and making sure that everything is, you know, that it flows, that there is an ebb and flow from at least one song to the next, and also across the entire thing. It can't just be, you know, one note the entire time, or people just get bored.
Yeah, you can definitely feel that from the beginning of the album. I mean, if we haven't already mentioned the name of the album, I guess we're recording now. So
okay, yeah. I assume this is, we've gone into podcast mode.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. For the listener, we didn't plan to say start, so this is just the beginning of the conversation. But the album's going to be called This Too Shall Pass.
Yeah,
with commas in between.
With commas in between. Everyone who writes This Too Shall Pass with no commas, they're grammatically incorrect. So
it's just wrong.
it is just wrong. Yeah, two is the aside. Yeah.
I was going to ask actually, as a little piece of trivia, like This Too Shall Pass. It's obviously quite a famous phrase. Where was it that you came across that phrase first? Or what was it? What was like the inspiration for the name of the album? Because I find that there are 12 tracks on this album, and so it's really difficult. At least I find, like when picking like something to tie 12 whole tracks together, like it's quite a mammoth task of finding something that's sort of this pithy and catchy, and you know that people will kind of recognize. So like, where was it that you got the inspiration for the title?
I remember where I was. I was outside Primark in Guildford, and I think I was just scrolling on Twitter, and you know, something came up that was like This Too Shall Pass, and I hadn't written the song This Too Shall Pass yet, which is the title track on the album. Hadn't written that yet, and I just thought, because before I'd been going off the idea of naming the album something sort of almost like a pun, because it's a sequel to my second album, which was called The Benefits of Devolution. And I liked the idea of calling the follow-up album The Deficit of Evolution. But then I thought, that's really pretentious. Like, on the level of okay pretentiousness, then you're hitting 90s Prince there. Like that's just too much.
It's not Metallica's Load and Reload. You know? It's a bit more than that, you know.
Yeah. So I noted down This Too Shall Pass with the commas in my phone notes, and then when I wrote the song, literally the chorus came like out of nothing. I was just playing this piano thing. And it was like
probably enough time in a Primark queue to make it up. Yeah. Obviously, This Too Shall Pass. You know.
Yeah. It's not linked to Primark. I just know that I was outside it. But like it was the lyric like This horizon's not that vast, and then I was like, what rhymes with vast? And then literally just hang on, I've got it. This Too Shall Pass. I've got it in my notes already. So it's like the line wrote itself. So yeah, and then I figured that was the overarching theme of the entire thing, just getting through something, you know, and coming out the other side.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I feel like when I was listening through the track list, 1 to 12 tracks, on this, it's fully fledged, you know, piece of art. But you can really feel like everything is sort of like, so say the first tracks, it takes into track 3 to really get some like drum rhythm, and it sort of comes in like it's kind of quite planned, if you quite say, but not planned in a way that it's like meticulous. It's like you just almost eased into the album as you first listen to it.
And you know, there's a lot of albums where you know, they'll put the big bombastic song at the start, and I've done that. Like on the album that I mentioned earlier, Heliotropic, like the opening track. Well, actually, the opening track is this like sunrise thing, and then it's like a 50-second song, which then leads straight into Heliotropic, which is this like distorted overdrive guitar, like like it's pretty upbeat straight away. So in order to make sure that people knew that this was a different project, I was like, I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna like make sure that people know what kind of album they're in for, because while there are like their upbeat moments on the album, you know, the majority of it really is, you know, you need to listen to it and take it in kind of to appreciate it. Not that they're like bad songs. Don't
No, not at all. They're
I hope. Yeah.
No, they're fantastic songs. I definitely got that kind of feel, that kind of like it's very much an album to sort of like to sit and ponder on.
Yeah.
I guess, which is really like they're the sort of albums that I really enjoy listening to, where you can just sort of like sit by yourself and just sort of like you sort of mull over the lyrics and mull over sort of the feel of it, and it's quite. I don't know if it's like gentle on the ear, but kind of like it appeals to sort of that side of it, which I really kind of enjoy in terms of listening and stuff. And I was going to ask, I guess, like in terms of like the writing process of the album, the lyrics. So you mentioned that you got This Too Shall Pass off of standing in a Primark queue and finding inspiration that way. But generally, how is it you approach writing songs? Is it lyrics that come first to you? Is it, because a lot of your lyrics, I've noted a few down here that I really like. One of my favorite is, and I mentioned this to you a while ago, was in Phosphenes, which is the second track on the album.
Second track, yeah.
I love to lose, but my love was lost in the chews. Is a really great line, and it's not the sort of thing that you hear every now and again. Sort of a lot of lyrics that I come across a lot of the time, you can almost predict where they're going beforehand. Whereas a lot of yours, they strike me and it's sort of like, oh, it's like a nice like, oh, I didn't see that coming at all, kind of thing. And so like, how is it you come across the lyrics, I guess, to begin with, and then sort of how do you deal with the songwriting process, or how do you approach songwriting? I
mean, I've already mentioned my iPhone notes, which are just full of stupid little turns of phrase. And, you know, that line was something that I had noted down prior. Like, I love to lose, but my love was lost in the choose. And like, originally it was like choose as in like the present tense of choice. And it's like, my love was lost in the choosing of doing that. And then I was like, actually, choose is like a homonym or homophone for choose, as in chewing. It's like that's more likely what it is to be in love and you know, have a rough time of it. So I changed that to choose, and there's a lot of just like picking out things that have, you know, I've written down on my notes, or like for Phosphenes specifically. And I filmed some behind the scenes videos for like behind the songs, like for the writing, which are coming out this week, because this is Tuesday the 22nd of September.
Yes, it is.
And this week, so yesterday, here we go. I'm getting into my calendar now. Yesterday I released the Phosphenes one, and I mentioned that I was working in a cafe at the time, and I hadn't written anything in ages. And then I was walking home, and this line came to me, the opening line of the song, I've been talking to myself lately. Because I'd been talking to myself. Like I had my phone on, like I was recording a voice diary, talking to somebody on the other end. No one was there. Like I was in such a rough place that I needed that sort of company, which is really depressing. But I got home, and then this song just came out of me. Like a lot of my lyric writing, when it's not just, you know, based on something that I've written down as a note and I'm able to then, you know, conceptualize into a full song. It really, I don't know really. It sounds like a cop out. It sounds like I'm being all like Messiah, but I don't know where it comes from. Like a lot of the stuff, on my second album, there was a song called Placebo, and I literally improvised the lyrics the first time round. And
got it in one
with recording, just got it in one, and
wow,
it was this thing that just came out, and there were some wonky lyrics in that, but it makes sense. It's like I went back afterwards and I listened to it and I was like, this all makes sense, and I can extract a lot of different meanings from this. So, you know, sometimes I like improvising because it on that spur of the moment thing, like Dust, for example, the one that I mentioned earlier on, second to last track, that started as an improvisation. And I've still got the iPhone recording on my notes of me being like, I wish, like it's practically exactly the same song. So yeah, it's because when I write music, I'm also producing it at the same time. Like the songwriting process sort of starts and ends very quickly because it's here, and then in 20 minutes it's here, and then in 7 hours I've already done that and then forgotten to eat or drink for the day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It feels like there's like a really good like flow to it. Just comes out. You have that moment of inspiration. I mean, you release some of your records your previous records quite long ago. Like I think I think your EP and also the first record also came out in 2014.
Those are the ones that are on iTunes. Yeah. So I've been releasing since 2010. Really.
Sure.
And then there were a few EPs, and then my first album was a double album in 2013, which was just a range of genres and too much stuff, really, just too much.
It's trying stuff out,
just doing what I can, just
testing the waters,
throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks. And then the first album of the current era, if you like, of Phill Vidler. Like I hate referring to myself in the third person as an artist, but it's a different thing.
You can do it if you put like parentheses in it.
If I was just like, oh yeah, Phill Vidler, then I'm pretentious. But if I do,
if you're watching the Spotify podcast, Phill is putting parentheses in. By the way, he's not.
Yeah.
That's the title of the episode. Just Phill.
That would be great. And then people are like, "Well, is it Phill Vidler?"
It's the artist currently known as Phill.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I like that.
That's a reference to your Prince poster on the wall.
Yes.
Get the Prince stuff in there as well.
Yeah. But yeah, then that album was the one that I recorded in my bedroom in Canterbury when I lived there. Which this one is a sequel to. And then there were some other projects in the middle, like Phill Vidler and the Farseers, which is like the indie rock kind of project, alternative stuff, which is Heliotropic, and another EP. And then there was a hard rock project called Medway, which had an EP that came out in 2016. But since then, literally, I was just on a hiatus with everything. So it was just a case of, pulling my finger out, really, getting it all finished.
Yeah, because I'm quite curious in how you arrived at this current sound, which definitely has some like strong influences from artists that maybe we'll try and guess them a little bit. But I'm just curious, because we're still talking about the writing process, if it's changed at all. Because maybe like if you're writing stuff back in 2014 compared to now you have iPhones, you have voice memos, which maybe that was more like you wouldn't be doing on your iPhone back then, maybe. Or maybe you were.
So, I mean, the way that it's pretty much since about 2014, when I was writing that album, is when I started changing the way that I was writing, and, I was recording as I went as well, but obviously to a lesser, I didn't have this microphone, for example. I was using an SM57 on that album, which is
nothing wrong with that.
It's just a really classic microphone. And then I was using like a Behringer's C1 from 2015 till 2018, and then this since 2018. But yeah, I don't know if my process has changed, because I'm not really conscious when it's not that I'm like high on. I've not like taken some shrooms and I'm just like, oh yeah, let's write some songs. I'm not that cool, but there's definitely a level of development of it over the last 5 years. There has to have been a development over the last 5-6 years. Otherwise, what am I doing as a writer?
Please, there has to have been.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it feels much more sort of focused. I mean, I think Leo and I we had the idea of maybe trying to guess. I don't know if you have any influence that you.
Oh, I've got a lot of influences. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, but if we,
find them.
I'd love to just maybe the two of us just shout some influences at you and see your reaction to
Okay. My problem with this is that I'm not that well versed at music, so I might just not know who you mean and look like I don't know anything about my field.
Yeah. Oh, I mean like if that's the case, then it's definitely us who are wrong. Because if we guess and it's not an influence, then it can't be. Like,
yeah.
Do you want to go first,
cool,
Johnny?
I mean, first that came to mind was definitely Fleet Foxes.
I do love Fleet Foxes,
but I mean,
it's one.
Not to like box you in or anything, but it definitely has like the palette of it. And then I think I mean, it's definitely different from Fleet Foxes, don't get me wrong, but in terms of that organic feel to the instruments and maybe the vocals are very different.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially their song White Winter Hymnal, which is one of my favourite songs of all time. That sort of building arrangement and like the vocals that were, you know, just this ever-present thing, like that definitely was an inspiration. I think they're a bit more, they've got more like Baroque sort of like medieval almost sounding modal stuff that they do.
They do actually, don't they? I'd never put those two together, but yeah.
I'm not that advanced. I mean, there's I don't know if there's any modal stuff on this album, to be honest, but probably not. But you know, in that regard, like, I'm definitely Fleet Foxes is on the list. Who's next?
Yeah. All right, Leo, do it.
All right, okay. One thing that I noticed sort of that sort of pervades a lot of the album was there's quite a lot of like cheeky kind of like harmonica playing, and that, I mean, like, again, you can shoot this down, but like that combined with the sort of the very sophisticated lyrics and sort of lyrics that sort of jump out, sort of screams a lot of like Bob Dylan to me. Would you say that Bob Dylan's kind of an influence on your process?
You heard of that guy?
Who's Bob Dylan? Well, the answer to that question is blowing in the wind.
Hey.
Thanks very much.
Yes.
Well, actually, it's not harmonica. It's actually
going to ask you, is it a melodica?
It is a melodica. Yeah, it's a melodica.
I swear there was like bits of harmonica on there somewhere.
It's all in. Actually, it's only in one track. It's in The Room.
It's in The Room. Yeah.
That's the one I've
track
noted.
3. Yeah. So you know they. It's only melodica. I mean, I've so not directly, but probably indirectly, in that Bob Dylan has influenced so many other artists that have gone on to inspire me. It's like Bruce Springsteen, for example. I'm not like a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. It's not that I don't like Bruce Springsteen. I've just not delved enough. But I know that Bruce Springsteen has massively influenced like Brandon Flowers out of The Killers, and The Killers are a big influence on me. So it's like,
sure,
you know, a different genre, obviously.
Yeah.
You haven't got any synth saw wave lines on this album, but
I'm going to take that as up.
You'll have to listen.
Yeah. Definitely check out Phill Vidler's album.
Yeah. Phill, that's Phill with 2 L's.
Phill with 2 L's, yeah.
Yes, Phill with 2 L's.
And Vidler is Vidler.
That is the name.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm sure you've got your SEO on sorted out. I mean, I feel like there's definitely a big sort of, I guess, Bon Iver. I don't want to just throw it at you and just like, again, box you into like, oh, you're like just a Bon Iver
wannabe, like, just like, a Bon Iver wannabe, yeah.
But it's different. I feel like Bon Iver is definitely a bit more like he's kind of going for that more distorted sort of sound, whereas you're sort of hitting those spots, but in a more like the vocals are a bit more organic. I think they're a bit more.
Yeah,
sort of,
I mean, definitely. Like Justin Vernon, who the main songwriter of Bon Iver, like massive influence on me. Like this, you can't really see what it is, but this cream thing here is actually the lyric insert in the 10th anniversary vinyl of their first album, For Emma Forever Ago. So I've got
fantastic.
their lyrics on my wall right there.
Cool.
So you know, I started loving them back in, you know, late 2013, early 2014, and that was a big influence on the earlier albums and you know, just the direction of what I wanted to do lyrically as well, because like where Leo said that made me really happy, where Leo said like, oh, when I'm listening to your lyrics, it's like I don't really know where they're going to go next. There's just going to be something that jumps out and oh, I didn't know you were going to do that. That's what I learned from Justin Vernon and David Bowie. because those both are massive influences on me. And, you know, sometimes they just come out with these lines and you're just like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Like, where did they come up with that? And that's what I wanted to emulate. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes you just got to hang your influences on your sleeve, you know, just be like really proud of what's really touched you over the years, and you're giving a new take on it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with having influences as long as you're doing something different to, like, as long as you're like absorbing and, you know, churning out something different. If you're doing like carbon copy influence, like, you know, stuff, then it's you know, it's probably not the best artistic expression because that's already been done. You might as well say something different if you're going to say something at all.
Fair.
Yeah.
Leo, you got any more to?
Well, you stole my David Bowie one by mentioning
Sorry.
it.
Sorry.
Fantastic.
But the other one that this is more from like a guitar playing point of view, but like for example in the low, you use these wonderful voicings which have this kind of like it's like an A-shaped bar chord, but you miss out the G string, so to sort of to keep it open. It's very reminiscent of James Bay, and he uses a lot of that kind of like those particular guitar work, and I was wondering if he was an influence on you at all. Yeah,
I mean, at the very least, Hold Back the River, definitely, because like that track, when I heard that back in like 2015 or whenever it came out, and I learned it and I was like, oh, this is such a nice progression, and it's like, but it's so simple, how does it sound so good? So like I actually put a list together of like songs that almost directly influenced songs on This Too Shall Pass, like the whole way through. And like the one for the low, like on there is definitely Hold Back the River, and also Leave by the Swell Season or Glenn Hansard. So yes. You know
that's a funny that one clicks close to home because Leo's actually
very close to home
because actually Leo's once actually portrayed the not titular character but the protagonist in the on stage. So
yeah,
Mr. Once.
Yes, I was Mr. Once at university.
Yeah, I love that show and I love that film. And Glenn Hansard was also like a, you know, that sort of rawness. Like one of my favourite songs by them is actually a Frames song called What Happens When the Heart Just Stops. And it's just, he's got this sort of monologue that they do on the live thing on their second album, where he just says like, it's just this thing about when you're not feeling anything anymore and you just wish that you could be in like anxiety and panic because you're just not feeling anything anymore. And it's like, God damn, I resonate with that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Glenn, what you doing to me, son?
Yeah.
Pain.
Love those moments.
Yeah.
Have you got any more influences, Johnny, that you reckon?
I mean, I'd quite like to know if Phill has any more that he's... you know...
So what you mean is that you guys have got no other ideas, and you want me to.
I mean, we do. I can ask you how much Bright Eyes or Father John Misty you've got in you. But,
I mean, to be honest, like with melodies, I don't really know in terms of what influences it. I don't like hearing something that I've heard before, so you know, I'll try and write something that I don't recognise. But I listened to a lot of pop music growing up, like a lot of Michael Jackson, and like moving into Motown stuff, like Temptations, like all of that sort of really strong melodic content. I don't think there's a Motown song that doesn't have a good melody, you know, because they're so focused on having that hook. That it just became ingrained in my DNA, I think, as a songwriter over the last, how old am I now? Over the last 17 years or so of writing music. So, you know, but also Busted. Busted's self-titled record.
I mean, it's called pop punk for a reason.
Yeah.
It's pop.
Like that album changed my life because I was 10 years old when it came out. And they like the main thing which I really opened my eyes, and I wrote about this in my master's application. I'm starting a master's in songwriting in September.
Fantastic.
Have already started the master's in songwriting. We're in the future. Thanks. And in my application I mentioned this. It was about the fact that in What I Go to School For, which is the first track on that album, and then the last track, Loser Kid, they both reference Miss Mackenzie, which is this teacher at the school that they fell in love with, and it references, and even then in Loser Kid there's a bit that's like, that's what I go to school for, and it's like, oh my god, they're referencing their own music. Oh my god, they're doing it. What do they do? And it was like the Avengers, but on a Busted album.
It's the Busted verse.
Yeah.
Verse.
It's like a multiverse thing. So, you know, there's references on This Too Shall Pass. There's a line in, I think it's in Twine, where it's like, temper, temper, little one. It's been a while since you turned to face the sun. And Turn to Face the Sun is the chorus of my song Heliotropic.
Yeah.
From Heliotropic. And there's other bits like, why when I'm standing still do my colours still run, which is a reference to the fact that on the Heliotropic album art I'm like covered in colour, but you know there's these little things that are like dotted around my discography, which, you know, just make me seem like a human being instead of just a product, which is what I like.
Yeah, Twine and Strewn are definitely some of my favorite tracks on the album. They really
Thank you.
Sort of hit me. I mean, I wrote the word emo, but emo in sort of a way that like it evokes.
It's not an insult.
A bit more of a feeling. Yeah,
it's not an insult at all. Twine is absolutely an emo song. Like there is no way that that's not an emo song. Like Red Jumpsuit Apparatus sort of song. They'd have written that kind of song. But you know, the lyrics in that chorus, like, I'm so broken. I'm just holding myself together with twine. Yeah. Don't you dare say it gets better with time. It's like, yeah, that's an emo right there. I was just getting into my 2008 clothes, skinny jeans and a pink belt.
even even in Dust,
I remember that. That was a good look.
Yeah. Don't lie to you, Leo.
Well, no. I think I do remember that because as a bit of trivia, we used to go to school together, didn't we? And I think I do remember you played a gig at the Command House in Chatham. Yeah. And I think you were actually wearing skinny jeans and a pink belt. That's one of my earliest memories of you. So
there's a reason that I went there with that reference. It's based in truth, as are all legends. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a bit about the instrumentation and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of different. I feel like the instrumentation is used in a way that really supports those songs and melodies. So they're still at the forefront, but they're not like shoehorned in there, like sort of like Jacob Collier style. You know, they're kind of.
Whoa!
Also,
we're dishing on Jacob Collier now, are we? Blimey, are we 432 hertz or something?
We're trying to get more views, and so if we insult his channel, then he might come back and be like, oh, by the way, and reference Sonic Bytes. You never know.
I'm not sure that's how that works, Leo.
No, I don't think so. But you never.
You heard it here first. But I'm quite curious in terms of what your approach was. Like, was it just whatever was there at the time, or I mean, there's strings. You were talking about the strings before. You're talking about. I mean, there's different guitars, and
banjo, melodica,
ukulele.
There's
ukulele on, I think, one track. Yeah.
There was one I was wondering about as well. I think it's on. There's one where we were like trying to work out what instrument it was. Is it on Eastridge? It's one of the later tracks where it's like, do you have I can't remember the name of it, like, but back in the 80s they used to use like vibrators for it to make the guitar have that kind of like genuinely like 80s rock guitarists used to use
do you mean an EBO?
Yeah,
don't call it a vibrator, Leo.
No, before EBOs existed, they used to use
channel.
To all the children watching, but it's an EBO.
So it's on Dust.
Dust, yes.
There's an EBO, and that was used a few times on my 2014 album as well, which again was an inspiration from Justin Vernon out of Bon Iver. Like on their first album, there's a song called Flume. There's a song called Flume where it's, this rattly EBO all the way through the track, and I'm like, oh, what is that sound? And I was like, I'm just gonna buy one, and I just put it on a couple of tracks. Couldn't afford it, but now I've got one.
It always feels like it's like a coin. It's like a
Yeah.
sort of going across. You've almost like dropped it onto the it's
Yeah.
really weird.
Yeah, it's a nice effect.
Yeah, but that's cool. I mean, the strings were. I mean, I'm curious how you recorded the strings because it's very much like a home produced record.
Yeah.
I assume. And I think a lot of the time we were listening through to the album, there's a lot of amazing string parts on like Lions and even This Too Shall Pass. We were feeling sort of very, like it felt very cinematic. I mean, I'm not sure if that's just what strings do. They just kind of make you feel like you're in a film.
It's just automatic, yeah.
Yeah, but what was that like adding string parts? And
These are the first string parts that I've ever had recorded live. Because
Sure.
I have used strings on things before, but never in an intimate song. It's always been in like a bombastic song. Like there's some strings on the Manboy EP, which are used to sort of double up these distorted guitars, like Biffy Clyro style. I wanted to make sure that it was going to be as natural sounding an album on the bits that are supposed to sound natural at the very least. I got in touch with my friend Matt Norris, who we also went to school with him. So this is like a school project almost.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's an amazing violinist and producer as well. Like his ability to like get the best out of a sound is insane. So his mum Laurie Norris, and the cellist Sophia Ramnarine from Leicester, everyone just recorded at home, and then Matt, sorted out the files for me, sent them over, I mixed them in, and everything just sounded chef's kiss, so good, like just like better than I could possibly have done them with sampled strings, and that's the point. Sure. It's a bit like where they say like drone pilots, like drone planes will never have the intuition of a fighter pilot being in that that plane. So that for me was basically me taking my hands away and being like, right, where's the fighter pilots?
It's the whole like digital analog sort of thing. It's like, like, can you really recreate an analog sort of feel and not the uncompressed side of it, but just kind of, I mean, uncompressed was very much also, I feel like I felt throughout the entire record. It wasn't like a boxed in sound. Yeah.
Which is a struggle with a lot of instruments on some of the tracks, like especially on something like The Low or Twine, where like the drums are very present. Being able to like mix that, like I mean, I did a degree in music production, kind of, but it was changed from music production after the first year. So it was music for media, which is just composing. Really, they took the production out of it. So I'm not trained in mixing in any capacity, but I've had 5 years to get this album right, so that was my training. But yeah, like when it comes to choosing the instrumentation for things, like you can sort of tell if something's missing. Like even like the last instrument that I added after I said I'd already finished everything on the album was in This Too Shall Pass, the song. I don't know if you guys were listening on speakers or headphones or what you're listening on. Yeah.
Headphones.
So at the very end, when the strings come back in after the quiet section, there's this timpani, which is this sort of echoey, like sort of thing underneath everything. And that was the final thing that I added. And that was literally like, we're recording this in August, but it was a couple of days ago. Just before I uploaded the record, and I was like, something is missing and I don't know what. And then I was like, what if I try and imitate a heartbeat with a timpani? And it was just one of those 11:30 at night things. I'm like, oh, okay, let's do it. I might as well.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. That's not me agreeing that it's fantastic, but I agree with your sentiments.
One thing that I noticed, and I guess you mentioned it as well, a little bit with the hard idea of a musical, is that like a lot of the songs on the album, they are, like, to me at least, quite evocative of something that would belong in a film or in a movie. I was having a look at Just make sure I put this down. Like there's something like this Two Shot Pass. It just has that kind of like maybe it is the way with the way the strings are sort of used, but like it has a very kind of like movie kind of feel to it, I guess. Is that something that kind of like that sort of inspired you at all as well? Are there any sort of films that you really like the music in that you sort of would the kind of not that you'd like to obviously have the music in that film, but kind of listening to that music sort of like inspired you to kind of like come out with some of the stuff?
I'll tell you what. The second CD that I ever owned was the Shrek 2 soundtrack. And I'm not even lying. That is a fantastic soundtrack.
I could not agree more. I could not agree more.
So good. Way better than the first album. The first film's soundtrack. Because it's got like the best range of tracks. And I'm just like,
they just
how
smashed
did
it,
they
didn't
do
they?
this? They got all the best people. They got David Bowie back.
Yeah.
In 2004. He didn't release anything past 2003. How did they do that? So, you know, Shrek 2 as a soundtrack was me being like, yep, I know how songs work in like a visual media now because it works. Everything works. But also 500 Days of Summer, one of my favorite films.
Yeah.
The soundtrack of that, like with Regina Spektor and, you know, she and him doing all these. Oh, it's just such a good soundtrack. Simon and Garfunkel on that soundtrack as well.
Graduate,
with Bookends and The Graduate. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, and Bookends. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, just the landscape of a soundtrack being used in a film. Is basically just what life is. You know, when you're walking down a street and you're like, oh, I need something with a good walking tempo. So you put on Staying Alive by the Bee Gees and you're like, and you're walking to the rhythm. You're in a film. There's just no cameras. You know, like that is like, I've got this thing where if I'm about to get off the tube and I want to be upbeat when I walk off the tube, I have You Make My Dreams by Hall and Oates ready to play the start of so that it kicks on the beat as I step off the tube. That is how sad I am, just in general. And it works every time. I'm like, but I won't do. It's every time. It's just great. So, you know, those soundtracks changed a lot. Yeah.
I couldn't agree with that more. That's amazing. One that I have something similar like every now and again, like less so now because I travel a lot more by car. But like when I used to live in London, I used to take the Underground quite a lot. Like I'd have certain songs, like it's just a really good feeling when like I think you have something in your ears that no one else can hear, and it's kind of like, you know, like I'm feeling, you know, like so good, and that you guys have no idea like exactly how good I'm feeling. It's just amazing to be able to walk along having this little like secret you can keep to yourself, you know, this little like bundle of joy that's kind of yours that you can sort of walk along with.
But it's also the opposite as well. Like if you're in a bad mood or a bad place and you just want to kind of wallow, sometimes you just want to wallow, and you know you're listening to, you know, Bon Iver's first record or. But I'm a big fan of a musician called Dodie. I don't know if you guys know Dodie. Like she started on YouTube and like moved into the mainstream. She's absolutely amazing. A lot of stuff was inspired by her on this record, actually. Really? And you know, if I'm just feeling like I want to wallow, then I'll just put on an album and just sit, just pretending that I'm in a film as well. Just like, you know, just sat on a train, just like with my head against the thing, just looking out the window. It just makes me feel better. It makes me feel like people have been through this before, and that is actually what this album is intended for. It's the kind of record where if it's raining outside and you're feeling a bit down, you can sit in the window and listen to this record and not feel as alone. That is the point, because I've had those albums when I've been in that place, and you know, this is the, you know, the evolution of that. It's me doing what I want to be able to do for them. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's fantastic. And now I guess you can listen to all this stuff everywhere, anyway, anytime you want. Same way you can listen to Staying Alive while walking down the street.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
You got any interesting ways of releasing the album? Are you just gonna pop it on Spotify? Is that your?
Well, there are physical CDs that hopefully already with me. But I'm at the moment in August. I'm currently doing the final design work because I'm such a control freak. Like even getting the drums recorded by Robin Howe down in Kent, or getting the strings recorded by Matt Norris over at Paraxa Studios. Even doing that was like, I'm relinquishing control. I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm an egomaniac. I need to make sure that everything is in control. So, I don't really let other graphic people do anything. So I'm doing all the graphic stuff for the record. And I've got 3 Adobe programs open at once, even now. Because as soon as I'm off this, I'm going to go back to work, basically. But yeah, everything's is going on to, Spotify and Apple Music and, everything else that exists. TikTok, if that's what you're into. Got to do a little dance to East Ridge, why not? Mate, we can make that a trend. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Hashtag East Ridge dance.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious on sort of, you touched upon it a bit in terms of being in control of the whole record. And I mean, when did you figure out this was like the project that was finished? Was it just you got to this amount of tracks? I mean, maybe you had more tracks than you needed. And then,
is the project finished, Phil?
Is it done?
You're going to pull a Kanye on us. It's now finished. I'm not adding any more songs or taking off any more. The last song to be written was the opening, Brittle Soul, which is the instrumental overture of the album, if you like. That was last July, so 2019. I haven't been in the way of, I haven't been in the place where I'm like, I need to expunge this feeling. So, a lot of my writing cycles that I go through are based on how I'm feeling at the time, obviously. So at the time that I was feeling really angry and annoyed with everything, I wrote Man Boy, which is a hard rock project. At the time that I was feeling really light and bouncy, I wrote an indie rock project. And when I felt depressed and wanting to, wallow, I wrote a depressing wallowy album. It fits. But yeah, there was a track called Reachers, which was the closest B-side to actually staying on the album. And that I cut that like a year ago, but I still really like the song, but it just didn't go anywhere enough. Like it was like I could easily get bored listening to this song halfway through. It had some fun production in it, but wasn't really fit for purpose really. But it went in between East Ridge and Twine on the album. So like East Ridge on this version of the hypothetical year ago album had this sort of synthy, swelly ending, because East Ridge on its own is basically percussion and a cappella. There's no other instrumentation in there. There's no like synths or anything apart from the synth that I made from my voice. So at the end of it, having this sort of like echoey guitar synth thing coming in, and then it leads into Reachers, which is this sort of drummy song. Drummy? Is that a word? That's a song. It's a word.
Drummy's a word.
Drummy's a word. And
it is now.
It's very now. Similar to it's a word now. It's very similar to Twine in that it's kind of tom based. Like it's very driving as a rhythm, and then at the very end it led straight into the start of Twine, because the start of Twine is like boom boom cut. So it led straight into there, and it was like there was this almost this 5-song medley almost, if you like, because it was like East Ridge ran into Reachers, which ran into Twine, and Twine still runs straight into Strewn, and Strewn runs straight into Dust. So it's this like 5-song movement. But it's a shame because I really like the song and I might use it on something else in the future, but I just couldn't figure out where to go with it, really. I think it would take somebody else's ear to get it somewhere else. But I think that's about it. There were no other changes. I mean, Lions went off the album and then came back onto the album. That was a number of years ago, because this is obviously a 5-year project at the moment. So I think I took that off in 2016, then I put it back on in 2018. I took reaches off, and then I was like, right, I'm happy with 12 tracks. I'm happy with 11 tracks. I was like, oh yeah, 11 tracks. And then last year I was like, nah, it needs to be 12. So I put Brittle Soul at the start. But yeah, it's very rare for me to just cut whole songs.
Sure.
From the final thing. Like the only reason that I did with this one is that it was, that was one of the later ones to actually be written. So it was like, well, first in, first out kind of thing, like with a job. But yeah, I could use it in future, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited for this album I'm sure you are much more in a much deeper way. But as a person who's just heard it recently, I feel like it's, people should definitely listen to it. And,
Thank you.
And, I think there's, obviously nowadays it's a very different climate to be releasing music compared to, I guess, when you were writing the record and making the record, which is a completely different time. But I mean, any thoughts, fears, or just happy to get it out?
I mean, it's I'm very happy with how it is now. Like this is the third time that I've recorded it because I lost the first two on 2 dodgy hard drives. So
oh my God.
It is at the very least at its best now. Whether it could be better if I recorded it in 5 more years, that remains to be seen. But I'm not in the place that I was when I was writing the album.
Sure.
And it would feel disingenuous to release it years after the thing. I mean, it's already years after the thing. It almost feels a little bit disingenuous now. Like there's this video that I've got coming out on Facebook maybe it's already out. I don't even know. I haven't actually scheduled it yet, but I recorded this 10-minute rant back in 2017 about not feeling secure, not feeling confident in my music. And I edited it down to like 6 minutes, and then I had to put a disclaimer at the start of me now being like, I'm okay now. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. If you get sad, okay, I was sad too. So, there's, you've kind of got to grow with the record, but the record can only grow so far. And I've already got stuff in the pipeline for the next couple of years. Yeah, I've already got the next album written. I maybe even the next 2. Like it's just I don't really stop working, which is what's been annoying about this record because it should have been released 3 years ago, really. And then I lost it all. So at the very least, there'll be a lot more Phill Vidler stuff. Or Phill Vidler and the Farseers, or Manboy, or other projects. Who knows?
Whatever you're feeling, I guess.
Yeah,
that's what we've learned
on a day to day.
Cool. I've got 3 quick fire questions to wrap up.
Go for it.
Maybe try and answer as short as possible, but just to get them out there. So I guess the first one, it might produce a long answer, but what would your advice be for someone, for example, me, who can just never finish anything? In terms of what's like one thing you would say to someone that, in terms of being true, but also just doing stuff, finishing things?
Give yourself a deadline. Don't procrastinate. Make somebody else hold you to that deadline. Give yourself a reward for when it's over. Literally treat yourself like a child. Behavior management. Give yourself a treat if you get it right, like a dog.
Self-care.
That's what I do. Yeah.
That's good. Also, what's your favorite piece of gear, and that you would recommend other people own, or if it's just your own unique?
Ooh, that's tricky.
He's looking around.
I mean, you are a multi-instrumentalist, so I'm kind of giving you.
Yeah. I mean, I love this mic. Like, this is an Avantone CV12 condenser microphone. It's the same mic that Taylor Swift uses, or has used in the past at the very least, and it's just a gorgeous mic. But to be honest, this is Rose, and she is my guitar that I've had now for...
Hello, Rose.
Hi, Rose. Nice to meet you, Rose.
If we might, special guest.
If you couldn't tell on the Spotify podcast, I just spoke through my guitar. This is Rose, and I got her in about 2010. She's about 10 years old now, and she is basically an extension of my arm. and one of my best friends, which is really sad. But I've been able to talk through this guitar in ways that I haven't been able to talk out in the world. So there's a lot of, I owe this guitar a lot, which is weird because it's just some metal and some wood, and some plastic. But I'm sure you guys can attest that an instrument kind of takes on a life of its own, and it's because music is like a life force. Like it's not something that you can ignore. It's not something that you can tame. It is just this thing that is there, whether you want it to be or not. And the things in our vicinity that help us create that, they end up being very, very important to us. Look at Eric Clapton, like Blackie and Brownie, like those guitars are so like renowned for just because they're attached to Eric Clapton, but without them, would he have been as good as he was? And Lucille with B.B. King as well. So, these guitars that just seem to the outside world like just hunks of wood and metal, and, you could just get the exact same guitar, but it's not exactly the same guitar because this one has been weathered by 10 years of my playing. I feel weird playing other people's acoustic guitars. Like I felt weird playing Leo's guitar when I've played his before, not because it's not a nice guitar.
It just feels weird, doesn't it? Like it's not yours. It's not yours.
It's like being married for 10 years and then taking someone's wife for a night. It's just weird.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are into that, but
some people were. Just remember that if you play someone else's guitar, you are essentially taking their wife for a night. So handle with care.
Some people are singers, some people are swingers. That's the title of
I love it.
The title of the podcast.
Singers and swingers. I guess the last question I was going to ask, and it might have a long answer, it might have a short answer, was that you have said before many times that you are an indie artist, and I guess like to me, indie as a genre has been sort of blown wide open over the last 10 years or so. And I guess like what is it? Has it changed at all? Like, what does it mean to you to be an indie artist?
My first brain thing of that, which is called a thought. My first.
That's even before the thought. Before you even have the word for thought, it's like brain thing.
Brain thing.
It's that visceral.
Yeah. My first thing that I would go to is Ed Sheeran. When he started off, he was indie because he was doing it all himself, and then as soon as he became signed to a major label, I feel like his songs kind of lost some of their sparkle and like what they had. Like, I'm a massive fan of his earlier EPs because it was just honest, and it felt like there was kind of this wall of major label success that he's now sitting on, and he doesn't have to, do interesting things. And I'm not just wanting to crap on Ed Sheeran, obviously not. I think he's a very talented bloke, but I think he could. I think he's now at the level where he doesn't need to write good music in order for people to buy it. Some of his music is still good, but he's not got the same strictures that he had when he was younger and needing to write catchy music every single time so that people would just listen.
It's that like hand to mouth sort of like desperation of like, I need to be heard, and it brings something out of you. Whereas I think when you're more comfortable, you can take a step back, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's really important for any musician to record themselves. Not like exclusively, like if you can get into a studio and do your thing, then, do it. But I learned how to write through recording myself and listening back to myself and layering things. And I wouldn't be where I am now had I not done that. So I think it's just something that everybody needs to figure out for themselves, but give it a go. And just because a label emails you and says, I'll put your things on iTunes, don't just go for it because you want your stuff on iTunes. I wasn't on iTunes for the first God knows how many years of my career. It was all just Bandcamp, until 2015. Like the first half of my career, I wasn't on iTunes or anything. And then I got myself on iTunes and Spotify, because it's actually not that difficult at all. You just need to know what website to use, but no one really tells you what to use. So, and I've said this in one of the behind the scenes things, if anybody out there wants some advice on releasing music online and doesn't have a major label or a label at all, email me and I will give you advice. I'll send you down the right routes and help you out, because there's no need to not be heard. The only thing that's stopping you is you.
Absolutely. I guess the one, this might be a slightly quicker one, was so you said
sorry, that was a really long answer.
No, that was wonderful. I think there's a lot of people who need to hear that sort of thing. I think as indie artists and people who just who are struggling with that sort of thing. So like if you can reach anyone even through this podcast, and that's absolutely fantastic, and they need to hear it. I guess so you said you've been writing music for about 17 years.
Yeah.
What if you had one piece of advice you could give to your younger self, sort of like starting out, what do you reckon it would be?
Oh, blimey. Do you know what? I mean, apart from listen to more music, like just diversify, because when you're like 10 and you're only listening to Busted and McFly and what your sisters are listening to, there's not that much diversity, even though my sisters actually had a very diverse palette. Like I was listening to The Killers and then Tupac and, like loads of different genres, and I don't think you can really get further away from The Killers than Tupac.
That's that's a spectrum right there.
Yeah, Tupac is actually on my door over there. I think he's further down than you can see.
Sup, Pac?
But I what was the question? I got distracted by Tupac. Anything that I tell myself. Yeah. So apart from listening to more music, which is what I started doing when I was 15, when I really got into Bowie, I don't actually think I'd change my trajectory much, because I learned how to write bad songs by writing bad songs. And I'm not saying that all of the songs that I write now are chart toppers, but you can definitely appreciate listening back to my really early stuff. Like my first song was called Dumped, and it's not good. It's a rip-off of every 4-chord song ever, and also somehow Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne. 2 completely different keys. Doesn't work. But I was 10 and I had my heart broken, so I wrote a song called Dumped. When you're dumped, you feel like junk. That was one of the main lyrics. Anyway,
it's hard.
Yeah, tough when you're 10. Death and taxes, that's all it is. So I learned how to be a better songwriter by being a crap songwriter, really. And I don't think many people have had the 17 years of experience at the age of nearly 27. That's a long time of my life that I've been learning my craft, and anybody who starts earlier is probably going to be a better writer sooner. But I don't know what I'd give myself in advice, because I wouldn't really change it. I was writing on my computer, and I was uploading videos to YouTube and getting my friends to listen to them, like asking them what they thought about it, and just becoming the musician that I am. So I actually wouldn't give myself advice. Stop giving your heart to every single girl that bats her eyelids at you. Like that's one of them. Like keep hold of your heart, because some people are just going to want to break it.
And then you end up writing Dumped.
And then I end up writing Dumped. Yeah.
Anyway, on that note, I'd say... Yeah. I mean, I just want to say good luck with the release of the album.
Thank you so much.
The songwriting degree. I'm sure if we have you on again in the future, even mid-songwriting degree, after songwriting course, degree course, I'm sure you have much more to say. And
that'd be great.
Future records.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, lads.
Make sure you check out This Too Shall Pass, with commas, on all major streaming platforms.
And two L's in the Phill.
2 L's in Phill Vidler, exactly.
2 L's in Phill Vidler comes out on Friday.
It's Phill
Vidler. This too shall pass with the commas. 25th of September.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Sonic Bytes. If you liked what you heard, drop us a like or follow us on Spotify, Anchor FM, or wherever you get your podcasts, or drop us a comment on YouTube at Leo Kelly G Music, Instagram at Sonic Bytes, or Twitter at Sonic Bytes Pod. More episodes coming very soon. Stay tuned.